To the extreme left or the extreme right?
The left viscerally makes me often want to punch them more, because they're just so often like anti-common sense. So they just insist on championing things that are really about them, but they have to feel like they're social justice warriors. Mm-hmm. You know, they have to. It's very important for them to feel like they're the good people, and by telling us that we're all bad, that's how they know their terms. Right. People want to voice their opposition to what's going on in any administration. They're not happy with this. They're not happy with that. That's the way to show it. I mean, the Democrats are going to have to work really hard to figure out how they're going to blow this one.
Bill Maher is back, and this time, he's cutting deep. The far left has tried countless strategies to make their party appealing to Americans, yet nothing seems to stick. Maher seems to know exactly why the DNC is still floundering, and he lays it all bare in this video. So if you're hungry for scorching political takes, hit that subscribe button and let's dive right in.
So I would like to have a strong Democratic candidate to get things back to a little bit of normal.
Is Newsom the strongest?
He is right now. I mean, again, California, a lot of crazy stuff in this state. We know better than anybody, you know? If somebody breaks into your house and you shoot them, you have to worry that you're going to go to jail.
Right.
You know, lots of stuff like that. Homeless on the streets. I mean, and that's not just California. I've seen a number of people have died in New York, homeless on the street, because somehow they got it into their heads that the way to treat the homeless compassionately was not to get them off the streets. You know, us old school liberals, when we used to talk about this issue, the compassionate thing to do was to make sure they got off the streets, not to protect them in their pristine environment underneath a bridge.
Bill Maher is back, and this time he's not pulling any punches. The far left has experimented with countless ways to rebrand and reconnect with voters. Yet the effort still seems to fall flat. Maher claims he understands exactly why the DNC continues to struggle, and in this video he breaks it down piece by piece. If you're looking for bold political commentary and unfiltered analysis, make sure to subscribe, and let's get straight into it.
I think old school liberals would like to see a candidate in the Democratic Party who has the strength to disassociate himself from a lot of the stuff that made Donald Trump attractive to people who didn't necessarily like him so much, but just said, you know what? His brand of crazy, yeah, I'm going to go with that over their brand of crazy.
Bill Maher believes that Gavin Newsom might be the Democratic Party's strongest potential path back to power, but he carries significant political baggage. Earlier in the discussion, Maher openly acknowledged that Newsom has drifted too far left to comfortably appeal to mainstream voters, suggesting he would need to pivot toward the center. The message is clear. Unless Newsom distances himself from some of his more progressive policies, his prospects in the 2028 presidential race could weaken. Maher also pointed to California's visible struggles under Newsom, particularly homelessness and declining street conditions, arguing that real, measurable progress on these fronts is essential. Without both a strategic recalibration and concrete results, Newsom's national ambitions could face serious obstacles.
Here in California and across the country is immigration. Now we're going to have a partial government shutdown over DHS funding. The Department of Homeland Security essentially not funded, at least part of it now, going forward for the foreseeable future. Is that the right fight for Democrats? And where do you think that should go?
Well, I think ICE and the border people already have the money.
Right.
So no. So I would guess that's not a great way to do it. Yeah. Because it's not.
They say that's the only leverage that they have.
Yeah. I mean, again, the leverage they have is to win the next election.
Bill Maher contends that it's not only Gavin Newsom who should reassess progressive priorities. In his view, the broader Democratic Party needs to step back and reconsider how closely it aligns with the far left. Maher argues that many Americans feel disconnected from the rhetoric and policies emerging from that faction, seeing them as detached from everyday realities. From cultural flashpoints to economic strategy, he suggests voters often interpret these ideas as symbolic rather than practical. Maher warns that unless the DNC reshapes its tone and refocuses on tangible concerns like economic stability and public safety, it risks pushing away the very coalition it needs to remain competitive nationally.
People want to voice their opposition to what's going on in any administration. They're not happy with this, they're not happy with that. That's the way to show it. I mean, the Democrats are going to have to work really hard to figure out how they're going to blow this one.
Maher maintains that the Democratic Party currently holds limited leverage against Republicans, who control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. With that kind of unified power, Republicans largely shape legislative priorities and set the national agenda, leaving Democrats scrambling for influence. Maher argues that the only viable path forward for the DNC is rebuilding trust with voters in the upcoming election cycle. However, he believes the party is undermining itself by centering cultural conflicts instead of bread-and-butter issues. According to him, if Democrats fail to recalibrate their message around widely shared concerns such as jobs, safety, and healthcare, their chances of regaining meaningful ground remain narrow.
Let's talk for a moment about your relationship with President Trump, which has been interesting over the years. You well documented that you had this dinner with him at the White House,
very well
which you
documented.
talked about, which people have talked about. What's the nature of your relationship with him now? What's that like?
Well, okay, well, first of all, the people who stopped watching my show because I had dinner with him are idiots. In my opinion, they just are. They're just
Right.
completely emotional because they're always asking the wrong question, which is like, oh, how dare you have dinner with Donald Trump? The question should always have been, what did I say after I had dinner with Donald
Right.
Trump? Now, if after I had dinner with Donald Trump, I came back to this show and was seduced by that dinner and stopped tearing him a new one every week, every time I thought he did something wrong, then you would have a case.
Maher also notes that historically, incumbent governments often struggle in midterm elections, which on paper should have given Democrats a favorable environment. The electoral dynamics suggested an opportunity to reclaim lost momentum and expand their influence. Yet Maher argues that the party frequently mismanages moments like these, becoming distracted by internal disagreements and controversial positions. Instead of capitalizing on dissatisfaction with their opponents, they risk alienating moderate voters. He emphasizes that continued attachment to policies many perceive as overly ideological only compounds the problem. Without a strategic shift toward broadly resonant priorities, what could have been a breakthrough may once again turn into a missed opportunity.
I also don't pause for making fun of the left when they are, in my view, crazy. But that
And
doesn't.
there's been plenty of
And
examples.
there's plenty of examples of that. But I never stopped with Donald Trump. So I feel like having met him and sat down for 3 hours, it was a long dinner, and the left got very mad at me for reporting it accurately, which is he's very different in person. By the way, everyone who's ever met him says the same thing.
I would say the same thing. I've met him several
Of
times.
course.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they just couldn't abide by this. But okay, that's the truth. He met Ma'am Donnie, remember, the mayor
Right.
of New York. He had been yelling and screaming at him, and then he had him to the Oval Office. I think he's a nice guy. like,
Right.
Don't you get it? He operates everything out of a personal relationship. You have to have a personal relationship. Trust me, he's not upstairs at night reading the.
Maher did not shy away from addressing backlash from viewers who stopped watching his show after he shared a dinner with Donald Trump. He described those reactions as misunderstandings of his broader philosophy. For Maher, open dialogue, even with ideological opponents, is essential to democratic discourse. He argues that progress requires engaging with disagreement rather than retreating from it. In contrast, he suggests some critics prefer insulated spaces where their views go unchallenged. Maher sees that tendency as symptomatic of growing polarization, where nuance is lost and ideological loyalty is rewarded over thoughtful debate. By standing by his decision, he underscores his belief in conversation over cancellation.
It's just so disappointing that some of the people who I think of as rational people, Donald Trump, he does a lot of stupid things. He also makes people stupid. Like again, what is the alternative? He's the president. You can't not talk to him. What is the downside? I'm going to elevate him? Oh my God, you mean he could become president? It's
You
just
get a little more attention?
it's silly. And when you do talk to him, he does listen. That's what happened. He does listen. I'm not saying it's going to change him, but what I was trying to say afterwards when I talked about it at the end of last season is he needs more people like me talking.
Maher also criticizes segments of the left for how they characterized Donald Trump over the years. He argues that repeatedly framing Trump as an authoritarian threat eventually lost persuasive power with parts of the public. According to Maher, when messaging feels exaggerated, it can breed skepticism rather than urgency. As some voters questioned that narrative, they began reassessing Trump independently instead of relying on partisan framing. Maher suggests this gap between political rhetoric and public perception helped sustain Trump's appeal. In his view, alarmist language may have inadvertently strengthened the very support it aimed to
What's more annoying,
erode.
the extreme left or the extreme right?
The extreme right is more dangerous. Absolutely. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe that in conceding elections. He's made that plain. The climate thing we just talked about, those are just two issues. There are others. The left viscerally makes me often want to punch them more because they're just so often like anti-common sense. So they just insist on championing things that are really about them, but they have to feel like they're social justice warriors. You know, they have to. It's very important for them to feel like they're the good people, and by telling us that we're all bad, that's how they know they're good.
Right.
And that just becomes kind of annoying.
Maher raises what he considers a difficult but necessary question. What is truly lost by engaging opponents in direct, substantive debate? He argues that in a polarized climate, meaningful dialogue should be seen as a strength, not a weakness. However, he contends that certain factions on the left resist such exchanges, treating specific ideas as beyond scrutiny. Maher suggests this reluctance may stem from fear that strong counterarguments could expose vulnerabilities. Instead of testing their positions through debate, some retreat into ideological certainty. In doing so, he believes they forfeit opportunities to refine their thinking and broaden their appeal through open intellectual challenge.
Examples with that Super Bowl halftime show, where Kid Rock, who you had that dinner with, was doing his own show, and then Bad Bunny's doing his show. Which one did you watch, and what did you make of that cultural moment for America?
So funny. People were asking me the week before, which one are you going to watch? I said, I'm going to watch the real one, the regular one, like I do every year, and I'm going to honor it the same way by going to the bathroom.
Did you?
Of course, you have to go to the bathroom at some point.
Yeah.
But I watched it. I liked it. You know what? I didn't understand it, but like I said tonight in the show, I don't understand when Mick Jagger sings either. I don't understand any rock star. Nobody's really understandable. I didn't understand Kendrick Lamar very much, well either. I mean, that's okay. It's just a feeling. And, I said to,
Maher further argues that frustration toward the far left often stems from rhetoric that many perceive as detached from practical reality. He suggests that when political messaging conflicts with everyday experience, it can generate confusion and resentment. Rather than recalibrating in response to criticism, some activists, he claims, respond with greater rigidity. That unwavering posture can make constructive dialogue more difficult and reduce the possibility of compromise. Maher's broader argument is that any movement that treats its principles as immune to questioning risks isolating itself. Sustainable political success, he insists, requires adaptability, self-reflection, and a willingness to adjust when circumstances demand it. 10. Maher points to cultural moments like the Super Bowl halftime show as examples of how entertainment increasingly becomes politicized. What is intended as a shared spectacle of music and celebration often turns into a battleground for ideological interpretation. Instead of simply enjoying the performance, audiences dissect every detail for political meaning. Maher argues that this tendency reflects a broader cultural shift where few public spaces remain untouched by partisan debate. Ultimately, his larger warning centers on disconnection. When political movements ignore mainstream concerns, avoid honest debate, and cling to rigid narratives, they risk alienating voters. If Democrats hope to regain competitive footing, Maher believes they must reconnect with everyday realities, prioritize practical solutions, and restore a culture of open conversation moving forward.